What happens when a major political party, one that, built its entire legacy on representing the backbone of the American workforce, just completely forgets the basic concerns of those working people it claims to represent? Well, we just got the sobering and, frankly, historically pretty significant answer.
Yeah, and that's really the core of what we're digging into today. We're looking at findings from these pretty explosive post-election analyses.
Hmm.
And they're coming from inside center-left organizations.
Right. Groups like the Progressive Policy Institute, Navigator Research.
Exactly. So, look, these aren't conservative talking points we're discussing. This is basically internal soul-searching, these groups trying to figure out how the Democratic coalition just sort of collapsed after the 2024 election.
And the mission for us here is clear, and it feels critical for anyone watching American politics right now. We need to understand the hard truths facing the left. How did they lose again, even against, let's face it, a deeply controversial opponent? And maybe more importantly, why are they fundamentally alienating the working class voters? That blue-collar backbone they once championed. I mean, the sources we're looking at confirm President-elect Trump's victory really reflects a severe strategic political failure by the Democrats.
It really does. And get this, they apparently outspent him by $500 million. $500 million.
Yeah.
And still couldn't hold on to their base.
That spending point is incredible. So what's astonishing here, based on these reports, is the sheer breadth of the defection, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't just, losing more white rural voters, which people may be expected.
Yeah.
Trump actually shaves margins in traditional Democratic strongholds.
Places they thought were safe.
Exactly. And he made significant, really unprecedented gains among groups the Democrats absolutely relied upon. We're talking young voters, black voters, and critically, Latinos.
Wow.
This signals, a complete break from the political patterns we've gotten used to.
Okay, let's unpack that shift then, because it feels like it represents a kind of structural rewrite of American politics, one that maybe few in the elite media seem to really grasp.
Well, the number that jumps out from the analysis is staggering. Since the high water mark of Barack Obama's presidency, the Democratic Party has suffered a 30-point drop in non-white working class support.
30 points. Let that sink in.
Yeah, let that number sink in for a moment.
Exactly.
A 30-point swing. I mean, that isn't just an electoral setback. That's like a generation of political alignment completely coming undone.
It basically confirms that the whole idea, the long-cherished idea of a monolithic voters of color bloc, reliably voting Democrat, that's just shattered.
Utterly shattered. Yeah.
So looking at the bigger picture, the data seems to show that social class, and this is key, now defined mostly by education level, is replacing race and ethnicity as America's deepest political fault line. Why the college degree? Why is that the new dividing line?
Well, it seems like a college degree often dictates more than just your income, right? It correlates with your exposure, your environment.
Okay.
It correlates with working in the professional class, maybe working remotely, being aligned with cultural institutions, media, academia, big corporations that are increasingly seen, rightly or wrongly, as progressive and culturally liberal.
Right. And
Meanwhile, voters without college degrees, and remember, that's roughly 2/3 of the U.S. electorate, a huge group.
Thirds, yeah.
They're overwhelmingly in the material world, the physical working world. And the analysis suggests they feel left out of that cultural conversation or even attacked by it.
And the clearest marker of this sort of inversion you're talking about is who voted for whom based on income. I mean, think about this. For the first time in recent memory, the Democratic candidate won Americans making more than $100,000.
While Trump won those making less than $50,000.
Just completely flipped.
Totally flipped. The Democratic Party is now viewed, and the data suggests often accurately, as the party of the highly educated, high-earning professional class.
And the Republicans?
The Republican Party, conversely, is rapidly becoming the home for this burgeoning multi-ethnic working class. This blue-collar exodus, it seems it reached a critical mass in 2024, and it really highlights what these center-left sources are calling a disastrous strategic error, ignoring these crucial voters for years.
So, okay, they've hemorrhaged these voters. What were these working class citizens, the sources call them hero voters, what were they actually worried about? Was it, abstract ideology or something much more immediate?
Oh, it was brutally immediate. According to these reports, the conversation wasn't about complex social theory. It was about the grocery bill. It was about neighborhood safety.
Kitchen table stuff.
Exactly. Kitchen table struggles. Their priorities were loud and clear in the polling. Number one, by far, inflation and the cost of living.
How many cited that?
40%. 40% of these working class voters identified cost of living as their absolute top concern.
And there's a crucial insight here, isn't there, about how they viewed government solutions.
Yes, they didn't just worry about high prices in a vacuum. They explicitly linked that inflation to high government spending. The sources use this term deliverism to describe the failed approach.
Wait, let's define deliverism. What are the sources actually calling out there?
They're calling out the belief, apparently dominant among the intellectual left,
Yeah.
that constant, huge federal spending programs can automatically deliver political wins and economic good times,
Ah,
even if it ignores, inflation risks or the massive debt it piles up. This idea that Washington could just sort of print money to solve every problem, it seems it backfired completely on the very people who felt the sting of high prices the most.
makes sense. And what ranked second among their concerns? It wasn't climate change or foreign policy, was it?
No, not according to this data. It was the hard, inescapable reality of immigration. Voters squarely blamed the previous administration for liberalizing asylum policy and presiding over that surge over 7 million illegal migrants in 4 years.
7 million. That's a huge number.
It's massive.
Yeah.
And these voters, they're demanding order and security be restored at the border. That came through loud and clear.
And this is precisely where that progressive disconnect you mentioned earlier becomes, well, devastating, according to the analysis.
Absolutely. The sources argue Democrats were victims of opportunity costs. Basically, voters looked at the chaos at the border, they looked at the soaring cost of milk, and they saw the party focusing relentlessly on social issues that felt, niche, academic.
Instead of their material struggles.
Exactly, instead of their everyday economic pain.
And there's polling showing Americans overwhelmingly believe Democrats care more about advancing progressive social causes than the economic interests of average working families. I saw stunning detail on this perception gap.
Oh, the priority perception.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
When voters were asked to describe the Democratic Party's highest priorities, what did they pick? Second place, right after abortion, was LGBT transgender policy.
That's right. But here's the kicker. Internal documents, according to these reports, showed Democrats themselves ranked transgender issues way down the list, like 13th among their actual policy priorities.
Oh, 13th.
So this just demonstrates how successfully the perception of cultural fixation was branded against them, and how much oxygen that cultural conversation sucked up, completely overshadowing any attempts they made to talk about economics.
And that perception wasn't just abstract, right? It apparently had real electoral weight. The sources highlighted one specific, very effective attack ad.
The one showing the Democratic candidate discussing support for publicly funded sex change surgery for prisoners.
That's the one. The analysis showed that single clip caused a significant 2.7% shift in voters directly to Trump.
It was incredibly effective messaging because it encapsulated the entire problem voters perceived. You, meaning the Democrats, are focused on highly specific, culturally charged issues for a tiny group while ignoring the material pain of the majority.
And the working class read that as, what? Cultural extremism?
Basically, yeah, cultural extremism being prioritized over common sense material needs. A really devastating illustration of that opportunity cost idea.
So this is where the analysis shifts from just policy failure to a full-blown, devastating brand crisis for the Democrat.
Deep. The brand problem is deep, yeah. It goes way beyond specific policies. There's new polling data cited from battleground House districts, and it reveals the Democratic brand is just strongly associated with being, well, out of touch with mainstream America.
The labels are pretty damning, aren't they? And we should remind ourselves these numbers are compiled by Democratic-aligned groups.
That's crucial. A whopping 69% of voters in those competitive districts said Democrats were too focused on being politically correct. 69%.
Ooh, and elitist.
51% said the term elitist described the Democratic Party well.
That elitist label,
Mm-hmm.
it must translate directly into a trust deficit with working families.
It does. A clear majority, 56%, said Democrats are not looking out for working people. And among independents, look, the results are even worse. Only 27% believe Democrats are focused on helping them.
27%. So basically 3/4 of independents don't think you're helping them. You've completely lost the center ground at that point.
Seems like it. And furthermore, the working class, according to this data, views the Democratic Party as being more ideologically extreme than the Republican Party.
Which is saying something, given the profile of the Republican candidate.
Right. 58% of working class voters say Democrats have moved too far to the left. Compare that to only 47% who say Republicans move too far to the right.
That's a significant perception gap on extremism.
It is. And it ties into the final point here. leadership strength.
Ah, the strength factor. Always important.
Crucial. Working-class voters, the analysis suggests, yearned for a strong leader, someone who would shake up the status quo, provide some direction. And they gave Trump a massive 28% lead on strength.
28 points. And how did voters describe them?
The sources had quotes, right?
They did. Voters described Trump as things like a powerhouse or neat whiskey that gives it to you straight. It reflects this desire for disruptive, unvarnished leadership, it seems.
The opponent.
Likened to a flimsy Kia or a watered-down cocktail. Ouch. But it points to this idea that voters wanted disruption and change. They apparently interpreted the Democratic pledge to protect democracy as really just protecting a failing status quo.
Okay, so the sources make it clear that the feeling among many working-class voters after the election was relief.
Palpable relief, yeah. They had feared more of the same. Get this, only a tiny 2% of voters thought the existing system did not need changes. The desire for a course correction was just overwhelming.
So given all that, what is the center-left's own prescription for fixing this mess, according to their analysts? Well, they urge a dramatic course correction. They're actually looking at the UK Labour Party's successful move back to the center as a potential model.
Interesting comparison. And the core strategy they're suggesting.
It's pretty simple on paper, though maybe politically painful for the activist wing of the party, basically. Reorient the agenda around working Americans' material interests and mainstream social values.
Material interests and mainstream values. Got it.
And they need to reject what the sources call the rarefied luxury beliefs of upper-class elites.
Luxury beliefs. That's a pointed phrase.
It is. It means, practically speaking, championing common-sense fairness on social issues, prioritizing economic opportunity for everyone, and very clearly, definitively restoring order at the national border. Reject divisive identity politics is the message.
And does the polling on policy preferences back this up? What do working-class voters actually want?
It confirms this hunger for, common-sense self-sufficiency, pro-growth solutions, policies with really strong support. We're talking over 75%. Include things like making it easier to start a business, offering more alternatives to a 4-year college degree, and lowering taxes on working families.
So this isn't a mandate for more social spending or, say, restoring the federal right to abortion. Those weren't the top priorities showing up.
Not according to this data, no. Those were not the driving issues for this group. This is seen as a mandate to pivot away from activist-driven cultural battles and get back to tangible economic growth, personal independence. Stability and opportunity seems to be the message, not continued cultural revolution.
Okay, so if we synthesize all these findings, what's the single biggest takeaway?
The overwhelming takeaway from these internal analyses, really, is that the Democratic Party lost its focus on the majority. That's the bottom line. They prioritized, or were perceived to prioritize, activist-driven cultural battles and the concerns of the highly educated upper-income class.
Over the economic realities of middle America.
Exactly. Over the bread-and-butter issues.
Which raises a really important, almost philosophical question that cuts to the identity of American politics, doesn't it? The sources note something fascinating. Self-defined liberals are apparently the only group in America who do not think America is the greatest country in the world.
That's a striking data point.
It is. And it makes you wonder, when a political party loses touch with that foundational sense of patriotism, the kind that values national interest and hard work, and instead aligns more with an elite cohort that views the country with skepticism, focuses on internal cultural grievances. Well, the data here suggests that losing elections might become more than just an electoral outcome.
It becomes, what, a predictable cultural consequence?
Maybe a cultural consequence built on an elitist brand that, according to these center-left analysts themselves, ignored the day-to-day struggles of the very people they were supposed to represent.
A cultural consequence built on that disconnect. We'll leave you to chew on that one.